Cousins of the Ancient Israelites, Chapter 2, Grounded. A little over 40 miles northwest of Aleppo, in northern Syria, set high above a valley, there lie the remains of a gateway to heaven, an ancient temple, the meeting place of the heavenly and earthly planes. A colossal carved lion, its teeth and claws bared, guards the approach. Surrounded by walls of black basalt, its floor paved with pale flagstones, the temple is the dwelling place of a long-lost deity, worshipped by the Syro-Hittites, close cultural cousins of the ancient Israelites and Judahites. Partially destroyed in the 8th century B.C.E. and devastated again in a Turkish airstrike in 2018, this temple at Ain Dara is the closest we can come to the temple that stood in Jerusalem at the same time. Its structure and iconography map so precisely onto the biblical description of Solomon's temple, it's as though they shared the same divine blueprint. When I visited the temple in 2010, shortly before the war in Syria began, wild summer flowers dotted the grass at the temple's edges, dappling the feet of guardian beings and lions lining the base of its now broken walls. I took off my shoes and walked barefoot up the warm, shallow steps to the entrance of the temple's outer courtyard. And then I saw them. 2 giant footprints, each about a metre in length, carved into the limestone threshold. Neatly paired, they were pointing into the temple. The toes and balls of each footprint were softly, deeply rounded, as though they'd been pressed firmly into wet sand. I stepped into these enormous yet delicate feet. They dwarfed my own. I was standing in the bare footsteps of a god. As I looked ahead of me, I could see the vastness of the deity's stride into the temple. The left foot had been imprinted again a few metres inside the temple, this time on the entrance to the vestibule. 10 metres or so beyond that was the right footprint, inside the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum where the deity dwelt. The god had arrived home, and I was there to witness it. This was the grand residence of a deity whose precise identity has long since been forgotten. But although this god would fade from view, their bodily presence was clearly marked by those giant footprints travelling in just one direction, inside. There were no exiting footprints, no indication that the deity had left the temple. Rather, the footprints signalled the permanent presence of the god within. It's this sense of material presence that lies at the heart of ancient ideas about deities. The perceived reality of the gods was bound up with the notion that for anything or anyone to exist and persist is to be present and placed in some tangible form. It's to be engaged with and within the physical world. The footprints at Ain Dara communicated precisely this sense of placement. They marked the exact place of the deity within the world of humans. At this spot, where the heavenly and earthly realms met, the god was manifest and accessible to worshippers. The deity took on a social life. The power of the footprint to communicate complex ideas about social presence says as much about what it is to be human as it does about what it is to be a god. When we see footprints, we recognise them as material traces of being, a frozen moment of movement or stillness, a memorial, however fleeting, to a reality by which we configure ourselves in the world and with those around us. Footprints capture something of the extraordinary and the familiar about human life, the orchestrated and the haphazard, the durable and the flimsy. A toddler's excited footsteps imprinted in sand or snow. Celebrity shoe prints set in concrete on Hollywood Boulevard. Muddy shoes accidentally tracked across a kitchen floor. The footprints of a group of Australopithecus afarensis, some of our earliest bipedal hominid ancestors, solidified in volcanic ash 3.5 million years ago in Laetoli, northern Tanzania. The famous dusty boot print of Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin on the surface of the moon. A footprint isn't simply a trace or a representation of the foot. It's the material memory of its owner treading upon the surface on which the print appears, conjuring the presence of the whole body, the whole person. Our feet are not simply the pedestals on which we stand, or the motors by which we move, but the foundations of our presence in the world. The impressions made by our feet have imprinted themselves into the religious cultures we've created. The footprints of gods and other extraordinary beings are celebrated and venerated all over the globe. Divine or mystical beings are said to have left their footprints in rock art across Scandinavian and British sites of the Late Bronze and Iron Ages. On an island sacred to the ancient Inca in Lake Titicaca, separating Bolivia from Peru, the footsteps of the sun god Inti are displayed. In southern Botswana, the giant hunter Metsing left his footprints in wet earth around a waterhole. The extent to which the footprint appears in the ritual settings of human communities across time and space is remarkable.